Greetings, comrades, boys and girls, those who like to bounce in between. It's Dankey Kang here with a video response to a video uploaded on March 27, 2019 by an anarchist user named Re-Education called Tankies. So without further ado, I'm just going to get right into it.
Hi, my name is Aaron and this is my show, Re-Education, and today I'm going to talk about the word tanky. Now, I don't like that word. I don't think that it's useful, and I think that it actually works to divide us, but it does have an actual definition. The definition of tanky is a apologist of the violence and crimes against humanity committed by the Soviet Union, or Lenin, Stalin, Mao, and so forth.
Already I can see a little bit of a problem. You seem to think that tankies agree with the Western narrative that Stalin was some sort of a mass murdering butcher of humanity, that he killed tens of millions of people. Tankies look and examine the conditions that the Soviet Union was under. They examine what Stalin did, and they conclude that no crimes against humanity were in fact committed. So you sort of mislabeling tankies as being people who accept these crimes and apologize for these crimes. No, that's not true. We don't agree that there were crimes in the first place. Take the Ukrainian famine, for example. There are many people who follow the Western bourgeois narrative that the Ukrainian famine was manufactured by Stalin to purge the USSR of counter-revolutionaries. This is a vast conspiracy theory that, upon examination, has no evidence whatsoever. So that's just one example among many. You can look at the different facets of Stalin's reign. You can look at the Ukrainian famine. You can look at the Moscow trials. You can look at the Great Purge. You can look at a myriad of different things and come to the conclusion, independently through objective analysis, that no crimes against humanity were committed on behalf of Stalin or the USSR.
They're the ones that want to send in the tanks, as the saying goes. Now, why don't I like the word tanky? Because I find it to be a catch-all term. It's one of those terms that we use to divide people, and it's not dissimilar to SJW or jihadist. You see, when we're talking about divisions, divisive language, we're talking about things that divide us on arbitrary lines. And I think that you guys that defend the Soviet Union, Marxist-Leninists, Maoists, and so forth, you're wrong. I think that. I honestly do. I think that you're terribly, horribly mistaken. And I think that your ideas are flawed. They're not well thought through. And don't you realize that it is not communism that we need right now? It is anarcho-communism. You see?
Alright, so there was a bit to unpack there. It's not communism we need, it's anarcho-communism. Well, that's sort of a misleading statement, because we don't need communism, we need a socialist revolution. And essentially, the anarchist methodology for going about a socialist revolution, I won't get into it because you actually have a series of videos which you yourself break it down. So I'll save that for a future reaction. But as far as our solution to the capitalist problem, it is replacing the dictatorship of the bourgeoisie that we are currently in now with the dictatorship of the proletariat, which is something that requires the working class to seize state power. So again, I'm sort of debating a video here, and I would need it to work both ways, but I would be very interested to see how Re-Education thinks a socialist revolution can happen in a country, especially a country as developed as the United States, without the working class seizing state power in the process.
Marx once said, either we have socialism or barbarism. But the real truth is that at this point in the world's history, with all of the atrocities that have been committed by these unjustified hierarchies, these oligarchs who we did not even choose to put into place, who just stole their power, stole their ability, stole our money, land, and resources to become these powerful people. And now they are destroying the world to be able to squeeze us out of more money, power, resources, and whatever they can possibly grasp at. It is no longer socialism or barbarism. It's anarchism or annihilation.
So he has this sort of dichotomy where it's too late for socialism. Capitalism has become too late stage, where the socialist solution is no longer enough. We need a full-blown anarchist revolution, which, I guess in re-education's mind, it goes a step further than the socialist revolution. I'm not really sure how or in what way, because Marxist-Leninists usually tend to examine the material conditions of the proletariat in that respective country and work out their actions and approaches based on those conditions. The conditions prescribe the theory prescribes the action taken by that vanguard party. So when you have a mass movement of proletariats who aren't led by any one centralized theory, but are instead led by sort of a broad sweeping populism, well then, what is to stop reactionary or opportunist movements from seizing on that populism and then turning it back on the working class? For example, with fascism, that's a facet often seen with fascist regimes, where they take populist sentiments like, we want jobs back in this country, we want to cut down on corporate greed, but meanwhile they will enshrine capitalism in the society. They will stamp down on labor unions and all the other scummy things that fascists do. So without a movement led by a core guiding theory, a Marxist theory, it runs the risk of devolving into some kind of opportunistic reactionary movement. So when you say that anarchism is sort of a step beyond a socialist revolution, sort of the next evolutionary step, I think it's very misleading, because when I see an anarchist movement, I see a movement that has no it's like a body without a brain. It's not being governed by a central intelligence. It's just acting purely on animal reptile instinct, if you can get my meaning. So let's keep going.
That's the truth. Anarchism or annihilation. That is what we face right now. Okay? I don't think that we can solve our problems with state capitalism again. It didn't solve the problems in the first place, and I have a video explaining exactly why. And it's not going to solve any problems now. But does that mean that I don't like these people? That I don't want to work with them? Of course not. I think that we need to unite all working people. Left, right, center, everyone.
That, okay, so there's a few things to unpack here. I don't know if you are equating state capitalism with Tankies, but state capitalism is not Marxist-Leninism. That's not I mean, Lenin had a brief period in the USSR where he did what was called the New Economic Policy. But that was a stepping stone in Soviet socialism. That wasn't like the end-all, be-all model of the government. So, I mean, we can argue about state capitalism, but that is not Tankies. The different thing. Now, when you start talking about we need to unite the proletariat on the left, right, and center, I think that is a very dangerous game you're playing. Because now you're trying to say we should find ways to appeal to conservatives. And, I mean, just thinking about all that entails, it means diluting your message, it means race baiting, introducing these social Darwinistic, culturally chauvinistic attitudes about the West, and it just means selling out. It means selling out to reactionaries. So when you say we need to appeal to proletariats on the left, the right, and the center, you're not going to appeal to those centrist elements. You're not going to appeal to those right-wing elements unless you completely abandon Marxism, unless you completely abandon revolution. Conservatives aren't going to sign on to an anarchist revolution anytime soon. I hate to tell you this, re-education, but conservatives are pretty much the ideological enemy. Even though they are the proletariat, they will fight tooth and nail to prevent the proletariat revolution from happening. Why? Because they are reactionary. Marxist-Leninists realize that vast portions of the proletariat are going to be bogged down. They're either going to be too destitute to be able to devote their life to revolution, or they are going to be too alienated from the political process to even be interested in revolution. There are also vast portions of them, like the conservatives here in the United States, who find themselves selling out their own class interest to embrace this reactionary agenda. That's what the conservative movement is all about. So if you think that we should somehow shepherd these people, these conservative proletarians, into our movement, and that will somehow be successful, and that will somehow not dilute the message, the goals, and the overall structure of the movement, I think is completely naive.
That isn't in the bourgeoisie, the capitalist class, center, everything. I think that we need to unite all working people, left, right, center, everyone. That isn't in the bourgeoisie, the capitalist class. We need to be together and we need to fight the system. Luckily for us anarchists, and I'll be touching on this in future videos, we don't have to worry so much about being stabbed in the back by these Marxist-Leninists or Marxist-Leninist Maoists any longer, because we have strategies to get away from that.
Okay, I would love to see your strategies for kicking all the Tankies, all of the Marxist-Leninists out of your movement. That sounds like a great strategy to run a left-wing revolutionary movement straight into the ground as fast as fucking possible. Are you kidding me? In my own personal experience, I had a past experience where all of the Marxist-Leninists were kicked out of a group. That group went down in fucking flames. So, yeah, bold strategy, Cotton. Let's see if it works out for you. Now, as far as Marxist-Leninist stabbing anarchist in the back and betraying the revolution, that's laughable, considering the history of anarchism. Considering, the left opposition to Lenin and all that entailed and how they sold out to the Western capitalist imperialist powers. We can go into detail about that, but that seems like another debate for another time. But it's been very interesting seeing what an anarchist has to say about Tankies once again. I don't know if Vaush considers himself an anarchist or if he's a market socialist, whatever the fuck that is. But needless to say, they don't seem to have a very solid understanding on what Marxist-Leninism is. And the hot takes you should get out of this video is that this comrade wants to have conservatives in the movement and kick out the Marxist-Leninists. You can sort of see where his priorities are. He wants to appeal to right-wingers. He wants to appeal to chuds and kick out comrades. And you say that Tankies are the ones that stab the movement in the back. Fucking laughable.
But that's a future video. And trust.
Okay, so tune in for part 2. We're going to be checking out his how-to revolution guide. Because there's nothing I like more than seeing anarchists try to lecture us on how to properly run a revolution. I don't know why I do this to myself. It's painful to watch this, but anarchism is such a trendy topic now that I feel like it needs to be challenged. There needs to be people pushing back against this anarchist narrative because they are trying to monopolize socialism on the internet, and I'm not going to let them do that. I'm not going to sit idly by and let these children who don't know a single fucking thing about theory lecture me and all of us on the proper way to do a revolution, which means letting in chuds and excluding Marxist-Leninists. Great idea. Great approach. Stay tuned for part 2, and happy holidays, comrades.